Rabbi Daniel Lapin and Susan Lapin, welcome to Jewish Money Matters. It is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. We're looking forward to talking to you.
I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. I've been looking forward to the book because I had heard from Rabbi that this book was in the making, and
Yes.
I'm excited to have started reading it, literally loving it, devouring it, taking copious notes and underlying, and excellent work. By the way, is this the first book you work on together?
No, it's the first one that has Susan's name on the cover.
Ah.
I kept her under wraps till now.
Behind every great man, there's a surprise mother-in-law. My husband.
Well, this one is less behind and more alongside.
Yes, yes. Well done. The holistic you, integrating your family, finances, faith, friendships, and fitness. Such a necessary work. Timely, relevant, much needed. What sparked the idea for this work? I know you guys have been in the world of, influencing and teaching Torah principles to the world, not just the Jewish world, but the greater world at large. And you've been involved with hundreds, thousands of people from all walks of lives, coaching them, helping them. What were some of the things that you saw that said this needs to come out? We need to work on this.
Yeah, it was really simple, Yael. You'll remember, and I certainly remember very well, I was on your show about 3 or 4 years ago, and what we were speaking about then was one of our earlier books called Thou Shalt Prosper, the 10 Commandments for Making Money. And obviously, I mean, that book continues to do very well, but we realized from speeches and presentations and seminars and appearances revolving around the book, the people kept on asking questions that made us understand that there were other factors that we had to look at. Not everything can be resolved in terms of economic theory or financial metrics. So to give you an example, one of the things that we discovered was that deprivation of financial capability affects men differently from women. And so we had a lot of research on this, unfortunately, from places like the Pittsburgh area, when coal and steel vanished from Pittsburgh, or when furniture vanished from Connecticut. We saw a tremendous amount of unemployment among men, and that corresponded to a lot of male sexual dysfunction. And that was when we realized to talk about money, if you're not also going to talk about marriage relationships, you're leaving out a large part of the picture, because they do go very, very much hand in hand. What is more, looking at it in the other direction, obviously men are tremendously motivated to produce economically by the existence of women, particularly a woman in their life. And so, again, we found that there were variations in financial performance that were not answered exclusively by econometric data, and that a whole part of it tended towards areas of family. That was the start of our realization, right?
I was going to say, and then when you put in faith, which the question, we used faith because it starts with an F, and it didn't work to have, 4 Fs and 1 S, and we would have said spiritual. But that whether you think of money as something physical or spiritual changes an entire outlook of how you look at it, which then affects your marriage, and everything affects each other, your friendships, your community, and even your fitness.
Another example of that is that something that, again, places like Harvard Business Review and Forbes magazine didn't pick up on this stuff until the mid-'80s, but in the Torah, in ancient Jewish wisdom, this stuff is dealt with 2,000 years ago, which is namely the fact that optimism plays a huge role in a person's financial performance.
Right.
It also plays a huge role in marriage, because the two instances where you need an enormous amount of optimism is in choosing to get married and in choosing to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
And the pessimist is at a huge disadvantage because all he sees is how much can go wrong, and indeed much can go wrong. And so the whole area of studying optimism, seeing how the Torah treats it and how vitally important it is to find a strategy for people to be able to escalate their levels of optimism. And so that was, again, part of what Susan says. It's a spiritual factor because there is no material way to measure a person's optimism. If there was, we would all only hire optimistic people, but there is no way.
Right.
And so it's a spiritual area, and we realized if we're treating finance seriously as we are, if we really are trying to help people make more money, then we obviously also have to open the door to factors that are non-measurable, the factors we call spiritual, or we put them under the section in the book under faith.
Yeah. And I think it goes, what you're suggesting is beyond teaching people to make more money. It's not just making more money. It's having a completely radically more healthier relationship with money, which is what's lacking in the world.
And one of the things that we came across is a lot of people see the different parts of their lives as competing with each other.
Right.
So if I spend a little more time at the office, then I miss this time with my family. And if I go to the gym, then each thing competes because you only have 24 hours. The one thing we cannot grow is time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working on actually, no, they complete each other rather than compete. And that's a very different way of looking at it.
Yes.
Them
Yes.
all part of a bigger picture.
Yes, these 5 things complete each other. And you warn us against looking at these sequentially and focusing on one, perhaps at the expense of the others, which is obviously very, very important. Now, somebody might argue, about focusing on one area at a particular time in my life, right? There's a time in my life where I might focus on career or my children or whatever it might be. Or maybe there might be external God-sent events that might force me, they might redirect me to hone in or hunker down on one area. How do we reconcile this? Is there still room for disproportionately focusing on one of the 5 F's at a time? How does this fit into the holistic you?
Whose turn is it to answer? You go, you take this one.
We got a letter. We answer on our website. We answer 1 letter a week. We call it the Ask the Rabbi column. And we got a letter from a very upset woman who had graduated top of her class getting an MBA.
Okay.
And she had really devoted herself to her MBA studies. And she was just a mess because a year later, people who had done less than well than her academically were having wonderful jobs and she wasn't. And we pointed out and we asked, and it turns out she didn't spend any time making friends.
Right.
And making connections. And so that's part of the answer, that if you're going, there's no such thing as saying, I'm going to do only this, because the rest of your life is all tied into it. But even when you are focusing, obviously there's a period, when you have a newborn baby, that's very all encompassing. And one of the things we point out, first of all, and this is an ideal, and we know a lot of people don't have the ideal, but you never want to lose the knowing what the ideal is, that you have a man and a woman together. We say no one can have it all, but the closest you can come to having it all is the 2 of you together.
Yeah.
One person certainly can't. So that even when you are focused on one aspect of these 5, and of course there are times that you are, if God forbid there's an illness, knowing and keeping the others in mind helps you to deal with it more healthily. Because it's very easy to get pulled into a vortex where this is the only thing I can think about right now. And as Jews, we have, it's a wonderful thing. We have Shabbat and Chagim where you're forced to stop whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah. The Torah is holistic, right? It's every area. And unfortunately, the norm out there, the environment tends to prescribe this idea that you have to hyper focus on one thing and, at the expense of others. And it can be really, really detrimental, as you've presented in the book. So really the book, actually, something really interesting, and it's a signature to your work and your commitment to the truth is it's prescriptive in nature, in the sense that it's not saying, you need to pick some important things in life and you need to integrate them and work on all of them. No. It's already telling you what those things are. And it's giving us the warning sign that if we fool ourselves to think that these are not important or not of consequence, or that we can focus on one at the expense of others, we are not going to be winning at the game of life.
No, that's exactly right, and it's very, very difficult today because here we are, a quarter way through the 21st century, and
wow, when you say it like that,
time flies. Yeah, and so we in our rabbiing side of our career, as opposed to the financial guidance and the coaching side of our work, we've had many opportunities to sit down with young single women in their late 30s who are miserable and unhappy because they were taught and they were persuaded and they were indoctrinated to believe that as soon as they flick the switch that says, okay, I'm ready to get married now, guys would be lining up.
Right.
And that's not how the world really works.
Right.
And so we've done a lot of work with women in that situation and younger women, letting them know that there are certain realities that are prescriptive or descriptive, I should say, and that one has to understand how the world really works, because shaking a defiant fist at reality accomplishes absolutely nothing at all.
Mm-hmm. And I actually experienced this myself on a personal level. I was brought up in a world where you got educated and you got the best, you went to the best universities and got the masters and did the career thing, and you became assertive and knowledgeable and all the things. And I had a wake-up call during that experience in my early 20s. And as I learned, and I look to you, Susan, I look to, Jewish women around me, more observant. And I saw there's something that these women have that is not found in the women that I see in my corporate dream over here. And I became closer to Torah, true Judaism. And I remember having a conversation with my very successful, accomplished, wonderful attorney mother, my mother who's an attorney. And I said to her, I was almost 25. And I said to her, you know what? I want a Shabbat table. I want a husband. I want a table full of children. And I don't think that if I continue in this path, I am going to get there. And this was so eye-opening to me. My mother, as accomplished as she said, I am so proud of you that you've realized, because if I had to do it all over again, I would do it differently.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a mother.
A lot about your mother.
No,
that's a mother.
You have an extraordinary mom, because what we've found very often is that people have, in your generation, with mothers who claim and believe they fought for feminism, they doubled out and do their utmost to persuade their daughters not to relinquish the road to prosperity and the C-suite. Right. But at the end of the day, it seems not to work out too well.
Yeah. Those Torah true principles, they're true for a reason.
Right. And one of the areas, and we focus on this heavily. I mean, we're so happy with this book. It's we worked hard on it together, and it wasn't easy, actually. It was one of the harder books to write.
I would say so.
It was a hard book to write because
I can't imagine. Tell me why.
Well, because it's integrating 5 apparently radically different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many ways in which friendship relates to fitness, to physical health.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many ways in which family relates to finance, and the other way around. In other words, men with a few dollars do better in the marriage stakes than men without.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, in the other direction, because equations are true in both directions, 2 + 3 equals 5, but 5 also equals 3 + 2. And so men who have families tend to do better, apart from anything else, because the whole area of motivation is different. The stability is different. So it was hard to write in that area, and also because we were going in the face of much conventional custom, even within the Jewish world, where unfortunately, one of the things that has happened over the years is that Jews have bought into Christian thinking, and that's true, they really have, in terms of money being
tainted.
That's right.
The root of all evil.
The implication being that poverty equals virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And that that almost that struggling financially is almost a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think there's another thing in the Jewish community, particularly the religious Jewish community, which has bought into a lesson, again, a secular message, which is that you need X amount of money and it doesn't make a difference if it's the woman or the man earning it.
Yeah.
You just need the money.
Interesting. Talk more about that.
Well, without, we could do an entire show on the kollel lifestyle, but I think that before a couple chooses that lifestyle, I think a lot, if you go into it with your eyes open, and particularly if you grew up in a home that you at least have some idea. But if you don't have any idea what it is, and then you go into it, like everything else in life, it helps if you actually know what you're getting into before you get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And what you were saying, you said it when a man doesn't earn a living, it affects, but put it in the positive way. Earning money means something different to a male than it does to a female.
Right.
And both can do it, and both can be very good at it, and both can be accomplished, and both are intelligent.
And both can suffer with shortage of money.
Yes, but a woman isn't less feminine if she's not bringing in money. She can be super feminine, and she can lose her job, and that can be very stressful. And it could hurt her ego. It doesn't damage her femininity, though. She's not less of a woman. She may think she's less of a person. She may feel bad, if you're fired or whatever, but not less of a woman. A man who is fired feels less of a man. And that's what you were saying.
Well, the fascinating studies on this repeatedly assert and demonstrate and prove that women with financial difficulties are more attractive to men.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
But men with financial difficulties are less attractive to women. And part of the reason for that is that for men, being needed by a woman is absolutely vital, because being needed is very close to being admired and respected.
Right.
But to a woman that doesn't need you is, to a man, somebody considerably less attractive. And in these tests, they do them always in Psych 101. They always say, when they ask the guy, well, to rate these women, and then, we tell him also what the occupations are. And they routinely find, kindergarten teachers and nurses, women at the low end of the economic scale, they find them sexier and more attractive. And then when we invert the faces with the occupations, well, then they find the other women more attractive. So they don't really even, we're just poor guys. We operate very basically. And so we don't always know what's going on there. But part of what's going on is that I want a woman that needs me and I can be useful to.
Right, right. And going back to Torah, well, the man is the mashpia, the influencer, right?
Well, that's why, yes, you're right. And that's why the primary function in marriage, and as much as in contemporary terms, we may not like to dwell on this, but I'll try and phrase it, in the loving way that the Torah does, which is that money is at the center of it. And that's why the whole description of marriage revolves around money. And the fact that a ring, and this is an idea that has been taken over in all of Western civilization from its Jewish roots, which is the man puts a gold ring Why can't it be a ring from what's the cereal that used to give little plastic
Cracker Jacks.
Yeah, why can't it be a plastic ring from the Cracker Jack box? You know, she could say, I don't mind, honey. You know, I love you. No, she will mind. Because there is a very important financial dimension.
In some Sephardic weddings, it's actually coins. It's not a ring. It actually
it has to have a certain value, a proof of.
Right, exactly. And that's because the monetary dimension is so important, and it's always from him to her.
Right.
And that's because, and you know, in conventional psychology, this is referred to as the hypergamy phenomenon. Which is that women do look, and they're frightened of being termed gold diggers, and all he cares about is the money. But if you're a guy and you don't realize that your financial reality is a crucial part of who you are, and you want a girl that, love you for myself, not for your money, you're an idiot.
I was going to say, when we were, we had a shul that was Balei Tshuva. And so for a lot of the couples the women had grown up assuming there'd be the marriage ceremony, there would be an exchange of rings.
Yes.
Or their parents really wanted an exchange of rings. We had to say, you want to give it afterwards, but not under the chuppah, because that invalidates the marriage.
Halachically, a double ring ceremony is not a valid marriage.
You have to ask, what is Hashem saying? If halacha says the man has to give money to the woman, then that's something you can't just say, well, no big deal. There's a reason for it.
It's so interesting.
And we also know, by the way, we've got horrifying statistics that are absolutely unshakable now on the short durability of marriages where the wife out-earns the husband.
Yeah. You talked about that last time we had this conversation. You know, it reminds me of a conversation I had not too long ago with Rabbi Manis Friedman on the show. And we got to a similar point where, this idea that money is the leading cause, psychologists say money is the leading cause of divorce. And Rabbi Manis Friedman said, it's not really the money. It's the loss of respect that might happen when these circumstances that you're describing happen. And that's where the problem lies.
I don't altogether agree with that, because money is measurable. One of the great things about money is there's something called a bottom line. And, I have a tax expert who works for us, and we're also great friends. But one of the things I like so much is that when we converse, it's not about so much opinions and feelings. Numbers are numbers. And that's one of the reasons that in the Hebrew language, all 5 verbs that mean counting also mean respected, aristocratic, important, because numbers really are important. So I'm not sure I altogether agree with that.
Well, I'm not sure you're disagreeing, because I think what he was, I didn't hear that show, but it sounds to me like what he's saying is that earning the money gives you the respect of your wife.
I'll tell you where it's a problem.
Like she might lose she loses the respect if he's not bringing in the money.
Yes, and that's the bottom line, exactly, because we have worked with many, many young women who went through Beis Yaakov and the seminary process and were essentially, and I'm going to say persuaded, to believe that they need to marry a guy who is in learning, somebody who is not interested in making a living, and everything's great until they've had, usually the second child, and they cry every morning. They drop the kid off at daycare while they go to work,
right?
And they come to us and they say things like, "Can you help?" And there's particularly, I did a podcast on another Jewish show about money, and after that there were these women, "Can you help my husband become ambitious financially?" No, he's the guy you married. You knew what he was like. That was the point.
Right, which goes back
and you respected him. I know you respected him because you respect the study of Torah, and you did respect him. But at the end of the day, there has to be money in the bank account.
Which exactly goes back to our 5 F's, right?
Yes.
And that is one, and going back to how the Torah allows us to have a healthier relationship with this thing called finances. If we understand that by being engaged in the world of business and work, we are a partner in creation. We're making a dwelling place for God in this world. That's not achieved only through learning Torah, although a man still has to learn Torah at the same time as he's at work, that completely shifts that paradigm. And then we go out to work with pride and joy that this is part of a godly mission. This is not antithetical to our godly mission.
Right.
And that's why it is that, the Torah has more than 3 times the number of laws concerning money than it has about kosher food.
Mm.
And we are the only religion in the world whose holy book actually speaks extensively about financial relationships.
Right.
That's how important it is. We're going to be celebrating Hanukkah, as we do every year, thank God. And the Talmud, in the Masechet of Shabbat, the Talmud actually says explicitly that you may not use the lights of the Hanukkah candles for any purpose, not even. And do you know, Yael, what the not even is?
No, what is the not even?
Not even, this sounds like it's perpetuating an anti-Semitic stereotype.
Counting money?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
You're exactly right. So does this imply that Jews spend all their days
counting?
Shylock, counting? No, of course not. But on Hanukkah, you are actually supposed to be financially aware. That's why it's the only holiday in the calendar where we give Hanukkah gelt, where we give money to children as gifts. So it's not that God tolerates it. It's an essential part of God's plan for his people.
Yes, absolutely. You must have been reading my newsletter last night that I sent out about telling people to remember to give your kids gelt. I don't care how much you give them, but give them. I don't care. Find the cash. Give them gelt. It's
not only giving them, it's also sitting down and talking to them about what money means. Because remember, in the United States of America,
from it, etc. That's the whole purpose. 100%.
Yeah, children graduate high school in the United States of America not even knowing what a budget is, not knowing what the difference is between a treasury bill and a stock or a share or a bond, basic things that a 17-year-old going out into the world or an 18 should really know.
Yes.
And so we've got to take up the slack there. And Hanukkah is a wonderful time to teach children about money.
100%, 100%. Susan, you touched upon what we've now, kind of like the conversation's turned into this that you introduced, which is you said whether you look at money as spiritual or physical makes a huge difference. So we're already starting to get a sense of how do we look at money in a spiritual way? What are other ways that we look at money from this lens of faith and spirituality?
Well, there's an interesting thing, which is that in not all languages make a distinction between earning money and getting money. Hebrew does. So there was a period before the last, not the election we just had, but the previous one. I think it was Andrew Yang was talking about everyone should get, there should be a basic income. I forgot, do you remember what it was called?
Universal
basic income. So if we give everybody a certain amount of money, we'll have this great country. And if you understand Torah, you understand, no, being given money is not the same as earning. And again, specifically for a man to know, Yigia kapecha, this is what I worked and I did something for other people. And this is my proof that other people value what I do. Giving people money is very corrosive to the spirit. And, we don't encourage people to be on charity. We're happy to be givers of charity, but you don't want to be on the side where you're having to need it.
Right. In fact, one of our motivators to try to make more money is that we can give more money to the world.
That's right.
You hit on an important point here, other people, which is one of the things you talk about in the book, this idea of connection and how vital it is to the finances. Why don't we go there? What does that mean?
Should we go back to the first time in the Torah that it says something's not good, right? The world's wonderful. Everything Hashem makes, the trees, they're wonderful. The fish, they're wonderful. Everything's wonderful. And then the first time we have lo tov, it's not good. And it's not good for man to be alone. And on one level, it is talking about, we're going to see Chava being introduced into the picture. There's going to be marriage. But along with that, it's not good for man to be alone. The next time, the only other time we have that phrase, it's not good, is Yitro telling his son-in-law Moshe, you're doing too much by yourself. It's not good for you to do this on your own. we need to be part with and parcel with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that's also been lost in our society. You know, I'm talking now in America particularly, but before the highway system, people very often never went very far from their home. Now we're all over the place. The idea of friendship. And when people only have their friend, and we're very fortunate in the Jewish community because we have something called shul. We have something called living within a walking distance of shul.
Right.
So we tend to make friends, we make neighborhoods, but that concept of friendship is one that's been very, very attenuated in American society. You're supposed to be at work. You know, Microsoft built this huge campus in Washington near Seattle.
Okay.
And you don't have to leave the campus. We have dry cleaning. We have the gym. We have everything. And you sit there going, oh, wow, that's amazing. No, it's not. What they're saying is we don't want you to have a life. This Microsoft, your job at Microsoft should be all you have to ever do. And when business will say, we are family friendly. We're going to pay for you to freeze your eggs.
Oh my gosh.
What a crock. That's not family friendly. That's work friendly. We want to keep you at work. We don't want to lose you to build a family. And it very often doesn't work. And it's, you know, you're taking something that's natural and you're saying we're going to make it unnatural.
Right.
And not as good.
Right.
So that whole idea of we need friendships, and friendships help us. And we tell stories in the book. We tell a story of a man who had a business, a friend of ours who has a business still in Los Angeles. And on a Shabbat, his phone was ringing and ringing, didn't answer it. And eventually the police came to his business and they said
to his house,
sorry, and said, Mr. So-and-so, we're so sorry to tell you, but your business, there's a huge fire. And he had a lot of he had a business with a lot of flammable things. And he said, I thank you for telling me. As soon as the Shabbat is over, I will come see. And he went Motzei Shabbos after Havdalah, and his business was devastated. And it was a business that there were only 2 or 3 people in the Los Angeles area who did this business. And it was a very regulated business as well. There were limits from the government to how much you could do. And all of a sudden he sees his competitors there, looking at the fire with him. And he's thinking, his first thought was not worthy. And it was, oh my, they came to gloat. No, they came to say, you tell us what you have to do. We will finish our jobs and then we will put another shift on to do yours until you're back on your feet.
Wow.
Now that's they weren't religious. He was religious Jew. They weren't, but that is a very Torahic idea.
Right.
That your finances are not, well, I take advantage of other people to make my money. It's that I work with other people to make money.
Yeah, you reminded me of this idea. We, you know, at least again, in the world I grew up with, it was all about competition. Right now, we're in a little bit of more refined world. And so there's a lot more of the concept of collaboration. But even still today, I hear these narratives where, you know, there's competition and I can't invite that person to my seminar because they're my competitor. And it's like, if you understand that God has for everybody and that what's yours, nobody can touch, there's no competition. Like, we can all help each other thrive. There's plenty to go around, and we'll be making the pie a lot bigger for everybody if we actually connect and collaborate.
And that is another thing you said, spiritual versus physical. Physical things are, if we have a book,
finite, right?
It can't just grow.
Right.
But when it's a spiritual, the pie can grow. We can make more money. It's not that there's a finite amount.
You find that, you know, if somebody came to you and they said, please advise me, Yael, I want to open a jewelry store. I know a lot of jewelry stores are on 47th Street in Manhattan, but we're going to open up in Death Valley, California, because there are no jewelry stores there within 300 miles. So we really want to be somewhere where there's no competition. What would you say to them?
You're crazy. You're going to be away from your entire network and connection.
It's not going to work. If you're lucky enough to be able to get a store on 47th Street, yes, I know there's 600 other jewelers on that street. But that's the whole point. You will do better there.
Exactly.
Looking at competition as a thing to be fearful of is a very un-Jewish way of looking at things.
100%. Not to mention, like you said, it makes you better. You push yourself to use the maximum of your capabilities and ingenuity and all the resources.
But you help each other in the final analysis.
100%.
You know, I've got many friends who have stores on 47th Street, and they tell me all the time when I originally was doing some of the research, it happens all the time where somebody comes in, asks for a specific kind of piece of jewelry, and what do you say? You say to him, "Hey, I don't carry that. That's not my specialty, but
100%.
go down the block. You'll see there's a store called Joey's. Tell him I sent you. He carries these things."
Yeah, exactly.
And then 10 minutes later, somebody walks into your store and says, "Hey, Sam told me that you keep this kind of watch," or whatever it is. No, it's very important to see, to basically love the people who are in competition. And that's what when the Torah says, "Be napol oevecha al tismach," don't rejoice at the fall of your enemy. There are many words in Hebrew for enemy, but what's being spoken about there is this type of competitor. Don't be joyful when your business competition has troubles. Not good.
Right. Yeah, I love a line you have here in the book. Our wealth is other people. Our wealth is other people. Beautiful. Now, you also speak about this idea of sexual connection and parallel to finances. You give example of making bread, all sorts of other examples. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, we both can. So it's important, I think, to go back to something Susan said earlier, which is this very first negative statement in the whole Torah. In chapter 2 of Genesis, it says it's not good for man to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about Adam's matrimonial prospects, because the next sentence is not, "And God put Adam to sleep," and etc. That happens a little later. But that is talking about an existential problem that God has with the creation. Everything is designed to connect, whether it's musical notes or letters in the scale, or the elements of the periodic table. God built a world where iron is actually not very useful. It's brittle, it's hard to work, but when you mix it with carbon and molybdenum and a few other elements, it turns into steel. And we've got a whole world built of steel. Connection is what is important here. And so God gives two solutions in that chapter, two solutions to this existential loneliness. Not good for man to be alone. And the two solutions are marriage and money. Marriage, we see a few verses later, where God introduces Adam to Eve, and that's the start of everything. And it's also the end of existential loneliness, right? I mean, when you get right down to it, when lonely men go to sad strip bars, they're going to try and solve this problem of being alone. And that's what's happening here. And the money side of it is just a little bit later, where God says, "By the sweat of your brow, you will eat bread." And that's not part of the punishment. That's part of God's response to Adam's atonement. And God says, "I'm going to give you food," and the Midrash explains this in detail. "I'm going to give you a form of food now that no animal gets." And it's called bread. It takes human cooperation. It takes deferment of gratification. Bread is, and this is one of the reasons that we are not the only people who see bread as sacramental. My mom had 3 boys, of which I was one. And of course, I was always good. But the other 2 used to throw stuff around. She didn't mind when we threw stones at each other or blocks of wood at each other. But let somebody throw a bread roll across the table, and she'd lost it, because bread is holy because of this. And so the key thing is to see that God's response to existential loneliness is women, men and women, and money. And that's the beginning of the connection between these two ideas. And it's also interesting that the success rate in a secular environment, the success rate for new businesses is not that far off the success rate for new marriages. You see, when you try and build a skyscraper, when they build buildings, what is the success rate? High. When Boeing or Airbus delivers an airplane, what is, Boeing doesn't say, listen, here's a new plane. It's going to cost you $40 million. And we want you to know that we stand right behind it. This airplane has a 97% chance of flying. That's not how it works. Or when people build a boat, Titanic notwithstanding, they don't say, here's a boat, hope you enjoy it. You've got a pretty good chance of it floating.
Right.
Whenever you are dealing with things like that, you can always predict 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But why can't we get a book that tells us how to do a marriage 100%,
Right.
or how to start a business 100%? You can't, because these things are spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back to your point earlier of how important it is to understand the spiritual nature of money. And we should probably toss in a definition of spiritual, right?
Yes, let's do it.
The definition of spiritual, it has nothing to do with God. Mm-hmm. Spiritual, that's a part of it, has nothing to do with virtue or prayer or sin. Spiritual means explicitly and specifically, spiritual is anything that cannot be measured by a laboratory instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're hiring somebody and you say, look, we want you to work on the loading dock, so we need to know if you can lift a 100-pound package. So we got a little test here. There's a 100-pound barbell. Could you just show us you could? Fine, you've done the test. But if you also say to the candidate, listen, we've got a requirement here that we really want people to be loyal to our company. So we're going to subject you to a little test. Really? I'd love to get a test for loyalty because I'd make $1 million. Every single every single human resource organization on the planet would buy such a test from me. There is no test because loyalty is spiritual, cannot be measured in a lab.
Right.
And so the things that make a business work and the things that make a marriage work, in many cases are the same thing, because money is brought about by one human being connecting with another. That's how money is created. That's how money is brought into existence. And of course, a child is brought into existence when a man and a woman connect with each other.
And I think you use the word tension. One of the things we point out is that two people who are exactly the same and have exactly the same skills and talents and ideas are not good business partners, because they don't bring anything extra to the table. It's just more of the same. It's the best if you have a business partner who has different talents than you and a different way of looking and is going to ask different questions and have different strengths. And that's in a marriage as well, that we're not supposed to be the same. And so the idea of, well, we both will be nurturers and we both will earn the living and we both will do the cooking and we both will do, that's not really very healthy, because you need differences, and the sexual attraction is brought about from the differences.
Yeah. So good. So we're in this spiritual, and again, the person listening might say, but again, money is tangible, right? It's dollars and cents. And in fact, according to Torah, it is the epitome of physicality, which is why we can mistakenly think that it's not spiritual. But what we're saying here,
I'm not sure I would agree that it's the Torah says it's the height of physicality. It doesn't.
Okay, so say, but what I'm suggesting is that the Torah doesn't want us to look at it as a physical being, a thing, even though we mistakenly assume it.
Correct.
What the Torah is teaching us is to take something that's the epitome of physicality and see how it's actually one of the most spiritual things ever. And that goes back to Hanukkah, what you were saying today, how we teach our children what to do with the money, etc.
No, very, very much so. That's right. And I think one has to get back to the basic definition. Can money be measured by any instrument? And the answer is no.
Okay.
Well, somebody says, well, wait a moment, Rabbi Lapin. Every time I drop $1 bill into a Coca-Cola vending machine, I hope Coca-Cola advertises on your show, Yael, because otherwise I believe in not giving free publicity.
I hope so too. They would be a great sponsor.
Okay, but
as long as they're kosher, you know.
You put $1 bill in a vending machine. Hey, it's measuring the dollar bill. No, it isn't. It's measuring the currency, and it's measuring it. It's the right color and it's the right dimension. There is no instrument that can tell you the value of the currency. So if if you do a bathroom renovation in your house, Yael, and your workman pulls down a wall, and you find a biscuit tin inside packed with $100 bills, and you see, wow, $5,000 there. And turns out this is the house your grandfather built, and he put that there knowing one day his granddaughter or great-granddaughter would discover the money. When he put it there, that $5,000 could have been a down payment on a house,
Could have bought the new house.
or
Yeah.
buy the house,
Bought a new
or
mansion.
buying a car, right? Now
Right.
you're holding exactly the same currency in your hands that he buried in the wall
Right.
75 years ago, but it'll pay for groceries and gas for a few weeks.
So
And
good.
so the value of currency depends entirely on human interaction. And the fact that the value of money can be diminished by the absence or the obliteration of people's belief in the future, that I've just told you the definition of a recession.
Right. That's
And
right.
we could make, if we had a way of making everybody believe that everything's going to be okay next month, the recession vanishes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When money goes into when it becomes inflationary, and your money loses a percent of its value every month, which is something the United States has had over the last few years, that happens for only one reason. The great economist Milton Friedman pointed this out, but it only happens because of moral malfeasance. It's because of people in authority printing money for which the underlying value has not been brought into existence.
Exactly.
And
Wow.
so the connection to understand that money's value is absolutely spiritual in nature. And as Susan said earlier, since it's spiritual, it is not limited.
Yep.
And so if we just did a really simple, quick calculation, if I go and buy a pair of shoes in a store and I hand over $20 and I walk out with my nice fancy sneakers with lights that flash in the heel, and somebody comes up to me and says, "Do you realize you've been ripped off? You gave away 20 of your hard-earned dollars." And I say to him, "No, you don't understand. I wanted these shoes more than I wanted the money, more than I wanted the $20. He says, "Really?" I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll do as an experiment. Here's $20. I'll take your shoes off you. I'll give you what will I say? Look, I'm not going to go, why would I give you the shoes I just bought? I'd have to go back to another store and find them. I'm not doing that." And he raises the amount all the time. He says, "Would you take $30? And now, how about $40? Well, at this point, I'm a good Jew, and I understand the value of profit, and you're giving me 100% profit in no, I might take $40. We've now established that if I'm not using GAAP accounting, generally accepted accounting principles, but I'm using genuine value accounting, we now realize that by virtue of this transaction, I exchanged a $20 bill for something that to me has value of $40. I have literally got $20 more than I had before the transaction.
Right.
And if we go to the storekeeper, he paid $10 to the shoe wholesaler for the pair of shoes. I gave him 20. And we say to him, "Hey, would you like to undo the deal?" He says, "Are you mad? I'm as happy as could be. Right. I used to have $10. I had an asset worth $10. Now I got $20. So I've made $20. He made 10. The consolidated balance sheet of our little mini system shows an increase in monetary value of $30 simply because the two of us met in a store. And that's one of the reasons that the root of the Hebrew word store, chanut, is the same as the root of the word Chanukah. You can hear the same sound.
Yes.
Because it's a place that makes God smile. So where two human beings who are strangers get together and do something that brings value into existence and makes both of them happier than they were before.
So good. This is so good. And you just mentioned the word God, our creator. One of the things that you both do best in your work is to bring God back in, full stop, unapologetically. In fact, I'm going to quote something that you wrote on the book because it was just so, so good. You say, whether we explain our arrival on this planet in terms of a lengthy process of unaided materialistic evolution, or whether we choose to believe in a creator, has real consequences for how we live. Very few people consciously think about these consequences, but our subconscious is deeply influenced by these ideas and decisions we make. Up until now, we've said the F for faith is spiritual, as in the intangible, but there is a very clear God element here that you're presenting unapologetically in the book. Can we address that? Because I think it's fabulous.
Sure. Could you name any atheistic regime that has ever had a functioning economy?
None.
Doesn't exist.
It also is not big on marriage. Atheistic regimes don't like marriage because they don't like a loyalty that's to a person, even parent to child. They don't like children being loyal to parents. They want you all to be loyal to the government.
Right.
And God says, no, you can be loyal to me and also to a spouse and to a family. And that is something that it's hard to leave out. And we do try to say, it's, as you know, the people who read our books are not necessarily Jewish. Mm-hmm. The majority are probably Christian. The majority are believers. They do believe. Right. But for people who don't, and there's actually been a movement over the past 2 years. You see people who have declared themselves atheists, and they're saying, this isn't working. It's not working for the world, and it's not working for me personally. At a certain point, that is a decision, and it is a decision because the word faith means you cannot prove. We cannot prove that God exists. You certainly can't prove it for somebody else.
Right, right.
But the way you live, and you're probably a little young to remember Will and Ariel Durant. But Will and Ariel, do you know who they were?
That's very patronizing.
Oh, sorry. Well, they had first it was Will Durant, and then it's kind of, we like them because then first his earlier books say Will Durant and his later books say Will and Ariel Durant.
Ah, there you go.
But he turned history into a best-selling, Reader's Digest best-selling books. He has the history of the world. If you go into a half-price books club, you'll see bookshelves with 10 or 12 volumes.
Eyes left.
Yeah.
that whole top shelf over there is that set of books.
And he was actually brought up Catholic. She was brought up as a Jewish atheist. Okay. He was brought up Catholic. He was in seminary, and he came to the conclusion there was no God. And so they lived a life based on atheism. And towards the end of his life, she wrote a book after, I believe, he passed away. And she said he started questioning whether he had damaged the world.
Wow.
By promoting atheism, that he realized that without it, it was, and this is talking 60 or 70 years ago. This is not today, but that the world, that the whole morality, the whole system of loyalty to another person and marriage and all those things.
And above all, finance, this connection between faith and finance is crucial. Mm-hmm. As you say, atheistic regimes never have successful economies. And the greatest engine of financial creativity, the United States of America, greatest in history, was a country created by people who believed in God. Every single one of the signers of the Declaration were people who believed in God. And that's hugely important, simply because money in and of itself is spiritual. It's one of the reasons they call economics the dismal science, because money does not behave like airplanes or ships or skyscrapers. It is spiritual, and therefore it is extremely difficult. You see, when they moved, economics used to be in the religious department of universities until the Enlightenment, and then they tried to move it to turn it into a science. Economics doesn't work as a science because, in a way that science cannot explain, you can have two men who are in every way similar, background, IQ, skills, education, and put them in the same earning situation, and then revisit them at the age of 50. And one has a net worth of $10 million, and the other is in debt. How do you explain that?
Right.
It's because of inner virtue. It's because of morality. It's because of spiritual strengths. People are not just bodies, we're bodies and souls.
Mhm.
And nowhere is that more evident than how we relate to marriage and to money.
Beautiful, beautiful. And with that, I'll wrap it up by asking any practical tips, short of obviously devouring this book and taking, internalizing what you're teaching us. But for those listening in the audience, and this is sounding attractive, and they understand the idea that, yeah, my life is holistic. Things are not compartmentalized, and these things need to live together and be nurtured together. What are some practical tips that people can take, maybe start implementing that will help them live a more integrated life?
You or me?
Well, I just want to say that this is going to sound like a sales pitch, and it really isn't.
Oh, yes,
but we have,
it's a good sales
but we
pitch.
have a workbook.
We're
We
all
actually
about sales here. Oh, there's
we
a
have workbook that goes along with
Oh,
the book,
yes.
which has exercises
Of
Oh, that's
course
something.
that
there is.
helps people understand and pull it into their own lives.
There we go.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it is important. And, one of the tips is cherish your friends.
Yeah.
And, in the same way that you can't lose weight if you don't have a scale, you should have a way of measuring the number of friends you have. And that does not mean Facebook friends.
Yeah.
It means people, the sort of person who at the very least will return your call within 24 hours. Or maybe it means somebody who, if you arrive at the airport at 2:00 in the morning, you could call them.
Sadly now we have Uber and we don't even depend on our friends for those things, right?
Sometimes that is the case.
Right.
But it's important to work on building friendships.
Yeah.
It's not a static thing.
Yeah.
Because friendship and finance belong very closely together. It's not an accident that one of the things I love doing at weddings, I love going to weddings like most people do, but one of the things I really like doing is I go up to people and ask them how they connected to the wedding. Are you related to the bride or the groom's family? And the most common answer I get, particularly from men, is, no, I've been doing business with the bride's father for the last 10 years. We're great friends.
Nice.
You end up becoming friends with the people you do business with, and you end up doing business with people that your friends recommend.
Yes.
And so working on friendship deliberately and purposefully would be one of many, 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 many tips that we provide in the book.
Amazing, amazing. Rabbi Daniel Lapin and Susan Lapin, thank you so much. Wonderful work. Everybody, the holistic you, integrating your family, finances, faith, friendships, and fitness. Tell us where we can find the book and where we can connect more with your work and follow you.
Well, I can't give you the name of a popular online book retailer because they're not advertising on your show yet. But that would certainly work. And then our own website for any people who wish to reach out to us.
Or get the book. We do have the book and
we
the
have the book there as well. Is RabbiDanielLapin.com.
Beautiful work. And I look forward to many more books. Keep it up, guys. You're doing amazing work. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Yael. You do a great service with your program too.
Thank you.